Okay, Linda, thanks. Just like to welcome everybody to Growing Concerns for April the 23rd. Just wanted to go over the agenda, I guess, and we made a couple changes from the one that was sent out just because of the ability to get a couple people. So we were what we're going to do first today is we're going to talk a little bit about winter wheat and a crops update by myself. And then we got Brad Ewankiw, who's going to talk about something that we used to do a fair bit of, but we've kind of gone away from, and now we're looking back at pre-emerge wheat control. So it's going to be something that I think is a new way of looking at weed control again, and so Brad will give us a lot of information regarding how it needs to be done, just a good reminder because we haven't done it for such a long time, so, or a lot of us haven't done it for a long time. So I guess with that we'll get going. I guess just a little bit back at what's happened over the past week, and this was some of the conditions north of 16 Highway this past weekend, I guess between Saturday or Friday night and Saturday morning. Lots of snow up there. They got rain as well, and then last night there was a lot of areas where water was running over the roads in several areas as the snow was melting fairly fast because temperatures were up to 14 degrees yesterday and in that area, which was going to change the landscape quite a bit. It's really hard to see any snow around besides ditches now and in tree rows. So that's a good thing because it's bringing spring closer. But even closer, this was a picture taken yesterday or the day before yesterday in the Killarney area, and producers actually in that area out in the field, and was talking to Roy Arnott, and he's the FPA or the BDS down in Killarney area, and he was thinking south of town there might have been even the odd drill going. They missed most of the rain and snow showers that we've gone through the last couple of weeks, and so as you can see with this tractor going, there's even a fair bit of dust in some areas. Now this is probably one of the high fields and one of the fields that were well drained, but I guess it does show in some areas we're not too far away from being in the field. So I guess that's a positive, and things to be coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about winter wheat as we're getting into that time of year where producers should be thinking about getting out into the fields and checking the winter wheat and seeing if how the stand has made it through the winter. Because as we get into seeding, it's going to be harder and harder to keep an eye on it because you just get busy doing other things. So it wouldn't hurt to, if you got some spare time right now, get out there and take a look at your field and just start looking at the stand and seeing how it's made it through the winter. And just a picture of what some of the winter wheat looks like right now in the fields, and you can see there is some green growth, but this is probably growth from last fall. So this will all be new growth coming, and that's what the following slides will show you. Now this wasn't a picture from this year, it was a picture from last year, but I wanted to show it just as for producer-wise and staff as you're going out to look at the fields and to see if we're getting good growth. You can see that we have the crown right in this area here. And as you see new root growth coming out of the crown, that's letting you know that the winter wheat has made it through the winter and is going to survive. So that's a good, healthy growth. You have several new root shoots coming out. Now, this will probably be something you would see in probably a week to 10 days from now if the weather keeps going the way it is. And if you want, I know you could go out right now if the soil will let you, but you could go out and dig up some plants and put them in a warm area, and you'll see how they're going to make out just by bringing them into the house, and eventually they'll start doing or showing this type of growth as well. So if you want to, go out to your fields and grab some samples, just take a spade with you. I know the ground is still frozen in a lot of areas that I've been looking at, so it'd be pretty hard to get a good sample right now, but in a couple of days the guy should be able to get a pretty good sample. Go out there and dig up these plants and see what's happening. Just another picture of the growth coming, and you can definitely see the nice root shoots that are coming out, and the good healthy crown. So this plant definitely is going to make it, and hoping most of the plants are looking like that. When you're going to be going out there, or when you later on when the plants are starting to grow, and if you're concerned about your stand, I guess there's a few other things you should be looking for to see if you have enough plants that made it through. And this is always a really difficult thing to do, because a lot of the fields are quite variable, and you'll get areas in the fields where you'll have a situation where you're in that seven plants per square foot, which would be like a 47 bushel crop, to 30 plants or more, which would be a 60 plus bushel crop. But usually the problem we find is when you're going across the field, you'll have several areas that are really good, and then you'll have several areas that are poor, and it's really hard to make the decision whether the stand has made it or not. Past experience, we've had last year, if you were watching the webinars last year, Elmer had a field in the Shoal Lake area that we were watching all year long. It started out to be fairly thin, probably in that 7 to 20 plants per square foot, and we watched that field throughout the whole growing season. Winter wheat has an amazing ability to stool out and produce more stems and therefore more heads, and that field did really well. I think in the end it was anywhere from 80 to 90 bushel an acre winter wheat. So even though these numbers here are a guide as to what you can expect, if growing conditions are right, winter wheat is a very good plant for compensating and filling in areas. So again, that just kind of makes the decision a little bit harder to make. But I wouldn't be doing anything too harsh on the winter wheat crops. We have had a fairly good winter for soil temperature, and I wanted to show this slide here. Now, this doesn't apply to this year, but I really wanted to show is what the area is, what the temperature at the crown is needed to be for the plant to survive. And as you can see, basically it's anything from -20 and above, where your plant would still survive. And when last week when we had Mike Woboliski on, a lot of the soil probe temperatures that he was showing, we were barely getting below -10 to -12 in a lot of the areas. So we did have a good snow cover, and then we had the melt and then snow again. So I think we had a good insulation on the soil surface, and I think a lot of even though the frost seemed to go down very deep this year, it seemed like the temperature didn't get much below that -15 where the crown is. So I think in general we're going to have a pretty good winter survival for the majority of the winter wheat crops that are out there. And as you're going out into your fields right now, you can see some of them are starting to show and break some dormancy a little bit. So you will be seeing this probably in the next week or so, where you'll be able to get a good assessment. One of the other things that we're going to be seeing quite a bit of this year, and it's not just in the winter wheat, it's going to be in a lot of the other crops as we get out into the fields, is we're going to probably see a fair bit of volunteer canola this year. We had a really good year for canola last year. Yields were high, and potential for a lot of canola seeds to be on the ground. And so I think as you're going out and checking your fields this spring, your winter wheat fields, I think weed control would be something you need to keep a real close eye on. With the volunteer canola coming, it's it's going to probably be germinating. If we get a couple more warm days here, we'll see a lot of it germinating and going, and so that's going to be early, and if you leave it too long, you're going to definitely have some issues with weed control in your winter wheat. So just a kind of a weed to keep an eye on. I think the majority of the winter wheat did go on to canola stubble. So for those producers that they got the winter wheat in the ground, you know, make sure you're keeping an eye on your weeds that are going to be coming, especially the volunteer canolas and some of your winter annuals. One other thing, while we're talking about winter wheat, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having a winter wheat survival clinic. We're planning it right now. It's going to be probably in the kind of north of #1 highway areas in that area. We are just selecting a location right now, and we'll be having basically a survival clinic. We'll have plant samples there. We'll have some speakers regarding, you know, things to be looking for, issues, and just some general information on winter wheats. So keep that in mind. It'll be probably next week on the webinar here. I'll have a date and location as to where it's going to be. So for producers in any of the areas, I think it's something that we can take in, get a little bit more information, and also in a lot of places it'll still be before we get out on the lab. When you get looking at some of these weeds and you're seeing these weeds coming early, it kind of brought us into some thinking about you know, what producers can do to, you know, get weed control or look at doing weed control. And we were talking to Brad Ewankiw the other day, and he was mentioning some of the products that FMC has been coming out with that are more in that pre-emerge weed control, and we thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk to producers before the season gets going about some of these products and their ability to control weeds over a fairly long period of time, and give producers some options to weed control, and also spreading out the timing of spraying. And so we thought it'd be a good opportunity for Brad to talk to us, and so Brad was able to come on today. So I think what we'll do is we'll maybe turn it over to Brad right now, and let him give his presentation regarding the some weed control from some of the pre-emerge side.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, right on. And you should be able to see my screen now, a little picture of a schoolhouse.
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So thanks for having me on this morning. As mentioned, my name is Brad Ewankiw. I work for a company called FMC. FMC is a fairly new company into Canada here over the last 5 years. We've got a number of different crop protection products that we either have launched or will be launching going forward. As mentioned, we have been we're a U.S. company based out of Philadelphia and have been around since 1883. In the U.S., we've got a number of different brands, most notably the Authority brands, which I'll talk a little bit about today. In 2013, around 10 million acres of soybeans were treated with Authority, and really what's happening down there is a lot of resistance concerns driving that. As well, we have a product called Capture, LFR, which is an insecticide that we sell into the corn market down there for soil applications. Going forward in the next few years, we'll see that coming into Canada as well. Up until about 5 years ago, as mentioned, we didn't have a real presence in Canada. We sold some stuff in Eastern Canada, but not into the West at all. We started working with New Farm as of around 2008, selling a product called Clean Start with them, or the AIM in the Clean Start, as well as Authority herbicide, which is a pre-emergent for sunflowers, flax, peas, chickpeas, and then going forward soybeans as well. We currently have 13 full-time staff in Canada. Notably here in Manitoba is myself out of Winnipeg covering the province, and we have 5 people in Saskatchewan and 1 in Alberta, and we're continuing to grow our presence here in Canada with other brands such as Focus, Command, Pounce, and Rovro Flow, which a lot of people will remember from Sclerotinia fungicide from the past. But really what I'm here today to talk about is pre-emergent herbicides. Of course, everyone remembers Avidex, Edge, Treflan, probably still using some of it in certain areas. We have some new products that I'd like to talk about that are similar in regards to when they're used, however, a little bit different from the fact of being liquids and you know, little different than the older stuff. So first of all, you're talking about what is a pre. Well, essentially what we're doing here with pre-emergent herbicides is we're creating a barrier on top of the soil. And so as I mentioned, Authority, Focus, I'll talk a little bit about another product called Clomazone, are liquid products that are applied on the surface of the soil, and we're waiting for rainfall to incorporate, as opposed to older products like Edge, Treflan, or Avidex where incorporation was required. These products don't require that because of a difference in the chemistry of these newer products. They don't volatilize into the atmosphere. They don't get tied up to trash on top of the soil. They have different characteristics in regards to their soil adhesion, and so aren't tied up as tightly to soil particles. And so they can be sprayed on top of the surface, and then when they get that rainfall to activate or get it into solution, they're still there. They're still available for plant uptake or weed germinating weed uptake at that point in time. And essentially what we have is that chemical barrier where weeds are germinating within the top inch or 2 of the soil, and the product is taken up by the roots and controlled at that point in time. We like to call pre's being true residual weed control. There's lots of different products that can be applied early in the season prior to seeding or after seeding, but before emergence. Obviously glyphosate is one of those. It's been used extensively in Western Canada. Other products that can be used to burn off additives, products like Express, Heat, AIM, as I've mentioned already, or components of Clean Start. True pre's are providing longer-term residual control, and so this is, termed as 4 weeks, at least 4 weeks after that spring application, and you can expect up to 3 weeks, 4 weeks with products like Pre-Pass and Volunteer Canola, for instance. Express Pro has more residual than Express itself, and a product like Authority fits into that category. Another product would be Volterra, another Group 14. Where they're giving longer term 6-8 weeks residual weed control for weeds on the label. And as I mentioned before, we've got products that are pre-plant surface applied prior to seeding or post-seeding pre-emergence with no incorporation, waiting for rainfall incorporation. If required by the producer's practices, that can be incorporated very, very slightly. We don't want a lot of incorporation because what we're trying to maintain is that barrier on top of the soil, and we want a high concentration of product on top of the soil or in the top layer of soil, and or pre-emergence, as I mentioned before, after seeding but before crop emergence. And talked about rainfall activation and what exactly that means. It's almost a misleading term. What we're asking for is for the product to get into a solution so that those germinating seedlings can take up the product as they're imbibing moisture. A minimum of 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of rain is required to do that. And this graph just shows over the last 20 years, and it's taken from Selkirk, Manitoba, that really the risk of us not getting that type of moisture activation in the months of May and June are very low. Even in highlighting 2006, where everyone will remember was very, very dry summer and spring, we did still get an inch of rain in June and in May. So there would have been some uptake of product even in that type of a condition in 2006, although be it would have been less. Just a note here, because these products can sit on top of the surface and aren't aching to tie up by trash or volatility, if it is a week or two after application that you get that rainfall for activation, it still will be there. It still will control the weeds that germinate at that point in time, and most of the small-seeded broadleaf weeds will germinate at that point in time as well, because they need that top layer of moisture to get germinated. However, weeds that germinate from lower down, maybe some larger seeded broadleaf weeds or larger seeded grasses will grow through and not be controlled, although the majority of them are germinating when that rainfall comes. So I'll just talk a little bit about the benefits of pre's and some of these new products. A big one is resistance management. As you can see, here's a list of the top 10 weeds in Western Canada. Lots of them having resistance to current groups. We've got red root pigweed, group 2 resistance M5, which is the triazines, Sencor. Wild oats, obviously we know we have groups resistance to 1, 2, and also 8, Avenge or Abidex. Lamb's quarters with group 2 resistance. Cleavers, a major weed north of Highway 16, groups 2 and 4. Kochia, most notably 2, 4, 5, and recently announced here in Manitoba, group 9 or glyphosate resistance. Wild buckwheat with group 2 resistance. Wild mustard as well, green foxtail 1, 2, and 3, and chickweed with group 2 as well as stinkweed with group 2. So weed resistance is a major concern in Western Canada, even bigger in the U.S., and I'll talk about that now. Glyphosate-resistant weeds in the U.S. are changing the way that farmers farm. As I mentioned, Authority in soybeans, around 10 million acres last year, and growing more into 2014, and if you go back 5 years, 2008, it was about 500,000 acres. And really what's driving that is, multiple different species of weeds are resistant to glyphosate in the U.S. Most recently here in Canada, Kochia. Just gonna I think I clicked the wrong thing. Shoot.
Are you having a problem, Brad? If you want to change your slide.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you want to change your slide, go to the bottom left-hand corner. There should be some arrows down there.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I just thought I lost audio for a second there because I had something funny pop up on the screen there. Okay. No. So, anyways, Kochia was confirmed in Kansas in 2007, and it only took 4 years for us to see that in Western Canada. In 2011, it was noticed in Lethbridge area, 2012 in southwest Saskatchewan, and then now in Manitoba, just last week actually, it was announced that they found 2 fields in the Red River Valley that have resistance to Kochia. So weeds that are prolific weed producers, spread easily, and have shown in the past to have resistance to different modes of action are most at risk of glyphosate resistance. Flipping back to the last slide here, just to show some of the concerns that they have going forward, we've got wild oats here. Benefitua, they've deemed as one of the highest risk for glyphosate resistance going forward. Cleavers in the parkland region, so the north of the Highway 16, and also green foxtail in both parkland and grassland regions of Western Canada. And really the reason is because of what I talked about. Prolific weed producers spread easily and have shown resistance to multiple modes of action in the past. So a major concern for us going forward, and real reasons for us to look at changing the way we control weeds and rotating new groups in. Benefits of the pre as well, products from FMC. Focus is a new one that we'll have larger quantities of, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it's a group 15. Authority and Authority Charge are group 14s, And then Command, Clomazone, which will be available for canola in a couple years, is a group 13. And so just making sure that we're utilizing the new modes of action available with pre-herbicides is going to be a major part of resistance management in the future. Another benefit can be increasing yields, and it's something that growers in the U.S., although they're driven by resistance and the concerns they have there to use pre's, starting to see the other benefits. And it's not just resistance, but it's also yield. And you can see here in fields where they've applied the glyphosate only in crop, and those weeds were less than 6 inches tall at the time of that post application, versus putting a pre down and then also controlling the weeds that come after. You're getting 4 bushels an acre. Same study in 2003 with lower yields, they saw even a larger increase of yield where they were applying a pre-herbicide as well as those post applications in Roundup Ready soybeans. So keeping the field clean, especially when there's heavier weed pressures, will definitely increase yield. We know that young plants of any crop are more susceptible to yield loss from having that competition in the fields. So, another benefit that people can see is more time. It assists growers with time management. If you think about if you're growing corn, soybeans, canola, Roundup Ready crops, even Liberty Link for that matter, and when it comes to in-field applications of herbicides, time is of the essence. And sometimes when the weather doesn't cooperate or winds don't cooperate, time can be short to get all of that done. And by using pre's and maybe for instance in Roundup Ready soybeans, skipping an application of in-crop glyphosate, you really allow for more time to get things done. Those crops like wheat or other cereals, some other pulses or special crops that need a little more attention. For in-crop herbicides, you have more time to get that done because you've put that pre down at the time of seeding and getting that residual weed control. Simple flexibility, again, the new pre's allow for application flexibility. It's not having to apply it in the fall and incorporate it. It's applying it when you want to. With the glyphosate burn-off, if that's what you're doing, or doing it alone prior to seeding, or we recommend or like post-seeding as much as possible, but when you do a post-seeding application, making sure that you're ready to go with the sprayer as soon as seeding is complete, so that you don't run out of time and start to see plants emerge, because these products are pre's. They can't go on after the crop has emerged. So it's really important to be ready to go with the sprayer if it's a custom applicator or yourself as soon as that crop is seeded. And that can be a challenge, we know, especially in years like last year where the seeding window is compressed, and this year it looks like it may be again with a little bit of a later season. So just keeping that in mind, that's the best way to get value out of these products, is having that lined up. So another benefit, flushing weed control. Weeds like lamb's quarters, pigweed, kochia, cleavers, they start to flush in the spring, and they continue to come with every rainfall, it seems. That product is still sitting in the top level of the soil and will control those additional flushes through the season. Post-emergent herbicides sometimes aren't enough, because you take out what's there, and if it doesn't have residual, there's another flush afterwards, and yield loss is still taken. And just an example of a trial from the U.S. again in Ohio, in Indiana and Ohio, and this was 5 sites, but looking at the control of lamb's quarters in Roundup Ready soybeans, and it's one of those flushing weeds where you have a post application only on the left, providing 65% weed control and 83% weed control at the different rates of glyphosate, and then doing a burn down with glyphosate only and a post, you still see an increase of weed control up to 80 and then 90%. But with that burn down glyphosate and a pre like Authority, combined with the post application of glyphosate in the soybeans, you're increasing that weed control upwards to 100%. And really that's what's again driving the use of pre's in soybeans in the U.S. is they want resistance management. They want to control 100% of the weeds, because if they have resistant weeds in the fields and they are able to reproduce seeds, their problem just is larger next year. So they want to get as close to 100% control of weeds every year with every species. So. And another benefit is just weed suppression. When you're coming in with a weed like, for instance, buckwheat can be a challenge sometimes with glyphosate. You know, even if it escapes the pre-herbicide and comes through, it's going to be weakened and smaller and a lot easier for that post-application to control. So now just a couple of tips on being successful with pre's. I've talked a little bit about a few of these already, but setting expectations is extremely important. Understanding the label and the limitations of the products. You know, what weeds are there. For instance, an example would be Authority herbicide on volunteer canola and wild mustard. It's a question I get quite a bit, especially for, you know, a pending registration in soybeans with Authority. Does it control volunteer canola? It controls volunteer canola, but it ranges between 30 and 70% with an average around 50. So it's not enough by itself to control glyphosate-resistant or Roundup-ready volunteer canola, for instance. So we just want to make sure that, you know, going in and using these products, we know what to expect, and you know, you may need to add a third-rate pursuit or something like that with the Authority at time of application to get, you know, good season-long control of the volunteer canola or bump that up. Use the right rate. For instance, wild buckwheat with Authority. Using the high rate is required for Manitoba, especially where we've got like higher populations of wild buckwheat. We need to maintain that higher rate, which would be 64 acres a case with Authority charge, or 32 acres a jug with Authority. That length of control is going to be increased. You'll get 30 days of control with wild buckwheat at our lower rates, but it won't be season long potentially, and going to that higher rate is just going to give you a much more consistent performance. Understand your soil. You know, looking at, and this is no different than the older pre's, we need to understand pH. The higher the pH in a soil, the more available a product is, like Authority, to the plants for uptake. Soil organic matter ties up the products, as well as soil texture. Smaller particles like clay have clay soil has much more surface area than a sandy soil, and that surface area again has binding sites for the herbicides. So what we just want to make sure we understand those different parameters, and you know, as we increase pH, as I mentioned, there's more availability. As we increase soil organic matter in a soil, there's less availability. And so we want to be looking at what rates we're using based on the soil types that are there. If you know, there's any questions after, or someone has further questions around something like this, contact Lionel and they can get a hold of me and we can have a discussion. Maintain your barrier, as mentioned. We want to try not to disrupt that chemical barrier once it's been established, which is why spraying after seeding is the most effective way to go about it. If you're not disturbing a lot of soil with your seeding pass, then a pre-seeding application is okay. And for instance, with planters or different types of implements where you have a very small opener, you know, just a knife kind of thing, you're not moving a lot of soil laterally, a pre-seeding application is okay. I've had a lot of growers do both and lots of success. We do know that going post-seeding pre-emergence is the most effective and most the lowest risk of having any issues with product being moved around and then weed escapes. So, and be diligent. You know, plan a regular crop scouting program, just like you would normally, to ensure that the right in-crop herbicides are applied and any escapes are being seen. So quickly, just around some of the products that we do sell and will be selling going forward. Authority is sold through New Farm and Authority Charge by FMC, available in the market, both products. Sulfentrazone is the active ingredient in Authority and Authority Charge. The only difference is the Authority Charge has a burn-off additive that is with it, and so carfentrazone is the name of that, or AIM. Just gives you the burn-off help with glyphosate, good for resistance management to add that carfentrazone there. Taking, you know, the weeds that are there that are emerged already, the glyphosate's working on, having that other mode of action work on them, because the Authority itself doesn't do anything to the emerged weeds. It only is active on stuff that's in the soil and still emerging, or emerging in the future. It's both products registered in flax, sunflowers, and peas right now. Pending in soybeans, as mentioned, it has been around a long time in the U.S. on soybeans, so will be a really good fit for growers concerned with glyphosate-resistant kochia going forward. It's very, very strong on kochia. Good on red root pigweed, lamb's quarters, and wild buckwheat as well. The weed spectrum is wider. I mentioned 50% average control of volunteer canola and wild mustard, so it's helping, and very, very good in cleavers for growers that are north of the Highway 16 or into that cleaver area as well. Other important information, recropping options have opened up now. We've just recently changed our label so that you can plant canola the following year after application. There's a rate range as mentioned, and really where you want to be going to the higher rates is for wild buckwheat control, cleaver control, and soils that have higher organic matter, 4% or higher, or heavy clays. Wild buckwheat, as mentioned, is the high rate we recommend for Manitoba. Focus herbicide is something that's available right now for corn and soybeans. We have very limited amounts available in Manitoba this year, but in 2015 things will be opened up. It's a Group 15. Group 15s have been around a long time in corn and soybeans in Eastern Canada and the U.S., but they haven't been used in Western Canada because this is a different class of chemistry and has a much better activity in lower moisture because it can sit on top of the soil surface for extended periods, 7 days. It's not volatile. It doesn't get tied up in the trash like some of the older Group 15s. And so it's available now, as mentioned, in corn and soybeans. Very limited amounts, available widely next year. We'll be expanding the crop spectrum to spring and winter wheat going forward, as well as crops like flax, peas, and sunflowers. Will be an excellent resistant management tool for Group 1 and Group 2 wild oat, as well as green foxtail, barnyard grass, some other grasses. Looks like it has activity on foxtail barley as well. A wide spectrum of grass and broadleaf weeds. Excellent on pigweed, very, very strong on pigweeds. Has activity on most small-seeded broadleaf weeds as well, so will be a good fit going forward. Requires a little more moisture than Authority, ½ inch versus a ¼ inch to get activated. It really has to do with its chemistry characteristics and its water solubility, and that broadleaf spectrum will provide additional value. It's going to be targeted and really useful for guys that have Group 1 and Group 2 resistance. However, that additional broadleaf spectrum will be a nice fit as well. And then the third product is clomazone, and this is a product that's been around a long time in Eastern Canada and the U.S. in cotton and rice. Was sold in Europe for years in front of canola or winter oilseed rape for cleaver control. And because FMC didn't have experience or expertise in the Canadian market, they didn't understand that there was a cleaver issue in canola here. And we've since coming here and sort of getting an understanding of what fits. We've pushed forward and looking at getting this registered in canola for cleaver control in front of herbicide-tolerant canola. And I know some areas have issues because cleavers, are so prolific and tend to flush through the season. Can be an issue with just using those post applications in canola. So that'll be where the fit for clomazone is. And that wraps up my presentation. I thank you everyone for your time this morning, and I wish you good luck this spring. If again, if you have any questions, I can answer some now, or if you can contact Lionel or Elmer after, and I can do that then. Thanks.
Brad, I do have a question here. It's they wondering if you could say something about watchouts when using Authority. Example, seeding depth for sunflowers.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Watch out for, as I mentioned before, and I can go back to that slide that showed the chemical barrier. If you think of where those weeds are germinating, sorry, those think of where the weeds are germinating in this top barrier, and that's where we're controlling them. And a good example, looking at the soybean plant, where you can see that the shoot started to come out around here. It's below this barrier of chemistry. So sunflowers are of any crops we're registered on, the most susceptible to uptake of sulfentrazone, the active ingredient in Authority. And If you get too shallow of a seeding depth with sunflowers, we can see some uptake of the sulfentrazone. So where we see any crop tolerance issues with sulfentrazone and sunflowers, it's usually where the seeding depth has been too shallow. So it's really important when you're seeding your sunflowers with using Authority to make sure that you're into that 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch seeding depth, so that we're below that that surface applied sulfentrazone.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Lionel, did you have any other questions?
Thanks, Brad. Brad, you mentioned about pre-emerge application, and there's a fine timeline there. Could you maybe say or comment on when is it too late to be applying, or what should producers be looking for when to, I guess, make the decision that they better not be going out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's if you look at our label, it states that don't apply after 3 days post seeding, and really that statement is there because in certain situations there can be very fast emergence of crops, and we want to make sure that we're not applying this product at all after ground crack or even at ground crack. And so my message is, if someone asks, can I still apply it? Make sure you do a very, very thorough check of where the crop is, if it's germinated, making sure that it's still, well below the surface and you're not seeing any ground crack, or you can't see any green matter, poking through the ground when you're making that application. We just want to make sure that there's absolutely no crop that's emerged or very close to emerging when we're making this application. And so it can be, 4 days after seeding, 5 days after seeding. It's just very important to physically go out there and double check in a lot of different parts of the field and make sure that it's not emerging.
Okay, Brad, and another question for you. You mentioned needing a minimum amount of rainfall to get the product activated. What happens if we get, 3-4 inches of rain? Is there any concerns if we get, a week of rainy weather where we get accumulations of 2 to 3 inches? Is there any issues there?
Really, what we're concerned about there is in certain soil types, sandier soil types especially, where we don't have those small clay particles to hang onto the product. Heavy rains can wash the product down. Essentially, it's not so much about accumulations over an extended period of time, but heavy accumulations within a short period of time. Those pounding rains, and a couple examples, in that Reston Pipestone area this past summer, where we've got 5 inches of rain at one time, that can wash the product down and dilute it within the soil surface or soil profile, and then we'll see reduced weed control after those types of situations.
Would we see any crop tolerance issues in those cases, or would it just be reduced weed control?
The timing of the rainfall could potentially cause some, but it has to be pretty much at the same time that crop is emerging or is germinating. Once that crop is established and emerged out of the ground, no, it's the level of tolerance that these crops have to the active ingredient, it's not going to cause any issues at that time.
Okay, well, I don't have any more questions for Brad. And Linda, we're caught up on the questions from your side?
That's right. There are no more questions.
Okay, well, then I guess if is the screen back to me, Linda?
Thanks again for having me on this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Brad, thank you. It was a good presentation and kind of timely, because I think we're getting more and more producers talking about pre-emerge and some of the products and some different ways of weed control. So this definitely is another option for guys to consider. Okay, I guess with that, there's I guess a couple things I wanted to mention. I mentioned at the start of the webinar that we'd be looking at having a, excuse me, a winter wheat survival clinic coming up probably within the next week to 2 weeks, and it's going to be happening north of 16 Highway in the South Parkland area. So I'll be giving you information regarding that as to time and location. It's probably going to be a morning meeting, and we'll probably have some plants dug up and showing you some things to look for. So that's going to be coming up. We also in the coming days, we're going to be talking about a few of the other crops. We're going to be looking at sunflowers over the next week here, and talking about some of the issues with planting sunflowers this year, and so that'll be another topic coming up. And so just a few of the things that are going on. As always, I guess if you've got questions and need to get a hold of us, there's my information and Linda's as well. The webinars are eligible for CCA credits, and as well as SC credits, or CEU credits, I guess they are, Certified Crop Science Consultants. So if you're interested or you're members of either of those, if you get a hold of us, we can get you your credits. These are the, I guess, the people in the South Parkland and Southwest that are working in the crops area. So if you have any questions regarding anything doing with crops in those areas, you can get a hold of us. And this is the crops team in the province. So if you're in need of any information throughout the province, you know, contact any one of these people, and they could definitely give you a hand. So I guess with that, if there's no more questions, Linda, we'll call the webinar a day, and see everybody next week.